Welcome to a journey through time and culture, a calm exploration of a world where the threads of tradition, family, and society wove tightly around the lives of women. Today, we step into ancient Africa, a continent of vast landscapes and rich, diverse cultures, where one custom shaped the destiny of many. Bridewealth, the exchange of gifts, cattle, or valuables from a groom's family to the bride's family, was more than a simple transaction. It was a binding social contract, a symbol of alliance and respect. Yet, beneath its surface lay a burden that many women carried quietly, a weight that shaped their lives, rights, and struggles in ways seldom told. In the next hours, we will gently uncover what life was like for women bound by this tradition. We will listen to their unspoken stories of love, hardship, strength, and sometimes sorrow. Through detailed exploration, we'll glimpse their daily realities, their fights and compromises, and the impact these customs had on society at large. So, settle into a calm space and allow yourself to drift into the slow rhythm of history. History lived not only by kings and warriors, but by women whose lives were the foundation of their communities. And if you enjoy these quiet journeys through forgotten worlds, consider subscribing so the next story finds you wherever you are. The weight of Bridewealth in the quiet village, where the earth meets the sky in endless horizons. A girl grows under the watchful eyes of her family and community. From an early age, the path before her is shaped by customs that stretch back generations, rituals, and rules that will soon define her future. One of the most profound of these is the question of marriage. Unlike the freedom many might imagine, a young woman's choice of groom was rarely hers to make. In most cases, it was her family who chose for her. Fathers, uncles, and elders negotiated with other families, arranging matches based on alliances, economic benefit, and social standing. Bridewealth played a key role. Leach agreement, sealed by the exchange of cattle, goods, or valuables, signaling a binding contract between families. The girl herself often had little say in the matter. Her feelings, hopes, or desires were secondary to the needs and ambitions of her family. The focus was on securing her future and, importantly, strengthening kinship ties. Occasionally, a girl might develop feelings for someone outside these arrangements, or wish to marry a person of her own choosing. Such desires, however natural, could clash sharply with community expectations. If a girl chose her own groom without the sanction of her family or the proper Bridewealth negotiations, she risked serious consequences. Society might see her as disobedient or rebellious, threatening the social order. Gossip could spread, families might be offended, and the young couple could be ostracized. In some cases, the groom's family might refuse to pay Bridewealth, refusing to legitimize the marriage. This would leave the woman vulnerable, lacking the protection and recognition the Bridewealth provided. Marriage at a young age was common, often occurring soon after puberty. Girls as young as 12 or 13 might be betrothed, and by their mid-teens, they were expected to fulfill their roles as wives and mothers. Early marriage brought its own harsh realities. A young bride's body was often not yet fully ready for childbirth, increasing risks to her health and survival. The sudden shift from childhood to adult responsibilities could be overwhelming, compounded by emotional isolation. Once married, the woman's world shrank to the household of her husband's family. She was expected to obey her husband and his elders, manage domestic duties, and bear children preferably sons, to continue the family line. In this life, personal choice was limited, and the weight of expectations immense. The bridewealth that once seemed a symbol of honor became a reminder of obligation and confinement. Many women bore these challenges silently, drawing strength from faith, community, and quiet resilience. Yet others struggled with feelings of loss, freedom, identity, and the life they might have dreamed for themselves. This tension between duty and desire, between tradition and individuality, shaped daily life in profound ways. The pressure to conform to arranged marriages in South Ancient Africa weighed heavily on many young women. The loss of choice was not only a practical matter, but also an emotional burden. For a girl dreaming quietly of affection or companionship, the reality of being promised to a stranger, perhaps much older or from a distant village, could be disheartening. Within the household, this absence of choice could deepen feelings of isolation. The new bride often found herself surrounded by unfamiliar faces, her husband's family, whose expectations were strict and whose judgments could be harsh. She had left behind her own kin and support system, trading one world for another. Community expectations were reinforced by social rituals and communal scrutiny. Weddings were public affairs, with entire villages gathered to witness the bridewealth exchange and celebrate the union. This visibility ensured that the marriage was not simply a private contract, but a communal event binding multiple families and social networks. If a woman or her family challenged these norms, the consequences could be severe. Gossip, social exclusion, or even formal punishment awaited those who defied expectations. A girl who refused a match could be labeled disobedient, a threat to social harmony. Despite these pressures, women found ways to navigate their circumstances. They built relationships within their new families, gradually earning respect and influence. Some used their roles as mothers and caretakers to assert authority in the household, especially as they bore children and became central to lineage continuation. Women also developed deep friendships and networks with other women's sisters-in-law, neighbors, and fellow mothers who offered emotional support and practical help. These bonds created a private world where women could share their fears, hopes, and stories away from male eyes. Within these networks, knowledge was exchanged about herbal remedies, childbirth, and managing family dynamics. This knowledge was a source of power, subtle yet vital, helping women care for themselves and their families in a world that gave them little formal authority. The ritual and symbolism surrounding bridewealth and marriage reflected deeper social truths. It was a system designed to preserve order, continuity, and alliances, but it also imposed limits on personal freedom, especially for women. Yet, in the quiet moments, holding a newborn child, sharing a meal with trusted companions, or performing a healing ritual, women found strength and meaning. Their resilience was not always loud or visible, but lived in the endurance of daily life. Their stories remind us that history is not only shaped by kings or warriors, but by the countless women who carried the weight of tradition, negotiated social expectations, and nurtured life in challenging circumstances. The custom of bridewealth extended far beyond the marriage ceremony. It seeped into the very fabric of family life, shaping relationships, expectations, and power structures for years to come. When a bridewealth agreement was made, it created a lasting bond, not only between the bride and groom, but also between their respective families. This bond was a social contract that demanded loyalty, respect, and cooperation. In many ways, the families became intertwined, their fortunes connected through the woman's role as a bridge. Within the husband's household, the bride's position was often complex. Although she was welcomed as part of the family, she was also seen as someone whose arrival had been purchased by the Bridewealth. This duality influenced how she was treated both as a valued member and as a reminder of the transactional nature of marriage. Her in-laws, particularly the mother-in-law, might see her through the lens of Bridewealth, expecting her to fulfill duties that justified the price paid. This could create tension and scrutiny, with the bride's every action weighed against family expectations. The husband, too, was influenced by these customs. He carried the responsibility to uphold the agreement, to honor the bride's family, and to treat his wife accordingly. Fulfilling these obligations was tied to his own social standing and respect within the community. Children born from the marriage carried the legacy of these ties. South Ancient Africa. Sons were especially important as bearers of lineage and future bearers of bridewealth for their own marriages. The bride's role as a mother was thus central not only to family life, but also to the continuation of social bonds. At times, disputes over bridewealth could strain family dynamics. If payments were delayed, incomplete, or contested, it could lead to conflicts between families, with the woman caught in the middle. Such disputes might affect her treatment within her husband's home, creating insecurity and fear. In some cases, families negotiated returns of bridewealth if the marriage ended, adding another layer of complexity and potential hardship for the woman involved. Divorce or separation was rare and difficult, as the financial and social consequences were significant. Despite these challenges, many women found ways to influence family life through nurturing children, managing the household, and participating in rituals. They gained respect and sometimes a voice in family decisions. Their ability to maintain harmony and care for kin became a source of subtle power. In extended families, where multiple wives and children lived together, the dynamics grew more intricate. Rivalries and alliances formed, shaped by competition for resources, attention, and status. The Bridewealth system influenced these relationships, affecting how women navigated their place within the family hierarchy. Beyond the household, the intertwining of families through Bridewealth reinforced community cohesion. Alliances created through marriage connected villages and clans, ensuring mutual support, trade, and protection. Women stood at the center of these networks, their marriages binding the social fabric. Through all these layers, the influence of bridewealth was profound, shaping not only individual lives, but entire communities. It was a system that balanced honor and obligation, support and constraint, connection and control. For the women living within this system, understanding and negotiating these family dynamics was a daily challenge. Their resilience lay in their ability to endure, adapt, and, when possible, find moments of agency amid complex social expectations. In a small village surrounded by rolling fields and winding rivers, a young woman, let's call her simply the bride, moves from girlhood into the world of marriage. Her wedding was marked by ceremony and exchange. The cattle and goods brought by her husband's family carried the weight of promises and expectations, binding her not only to a husband, but to a new identity as wife and mother. Barely 16, she had been married shortly after puberty, as was common. Her body, still young and untested, was expected to bear children, soon children, who would carry on family lines and honor the bridewealth paid. The The first months of marriage brought a quiet mix of hope and fear. She learned the rhythms of her new home, cooking, cleaning, fetching water, and caring for her husband's family. Yet a deeper, more pressing role awaited her: motherhood. In this society, a woman's value was closely tied to her ability to bear children, especially sons. The pressure to conceive was constant. Months passed with anxious hope, prayers whispered to ancestors and spirits for fertility and health. When the day finally came to give birth, the bride faced a trial both physical and emotional. Childbirth was perilous, especially for young mothers. Without the aid of modern medicine, each labor carried risk of complications, of loss, or worse. Surrounded by women experienced in midwifery, usually older mothers or community healers, she endured the long hours of labor. Their hands were gentle but firm, guiding her through pain with whispered encouragement and time-honored herbal remedies. Yet the dangers were real. The fear of death or illness shadowed every birth. A mother's survival was never guaranteed, and the loss of a child was a grief shared quietly among women. When her child was born, the bride's world shifted again. Motherhood demanded endless care, feeding, soothing, washing, and guarding against illness. The household's well-being depended on her ability to nurture new life, but the demands were relentless. Pregnancies often came in quick succession, leaving little time for recovery. Each child added joy, but also strain on her body, her energy, and her standing within the family. Beyond the physical challenges, motherhood carried social weight. A mother's status rose with the number and health of her children. Sons, in particular, were treasured, linked directly to the continuation of family lineage and social alliances. The bride's relationship with her husband evolved under these pressures. While some husbands were supportive, others remained distant, expecting obedience and service rather than companionship. In-laws watched closely, their approval tied to the bride's success in bearing children and managing household duties. Praise could bring security. Criticism could deepen isolation. Throughout these years, the bride's identity was shaped by these intertwined roles: wife, mother, laborer, and bearer of family legacy. Her story is one among many, reflecting the lives of countless women whose endurance under Bridewealth customs was both a personal journey and a pillar of social structure. As the bride's story unfolds, so too does the relentless pressure of childbirth, a cycle that shapes her very existence. Each pregnancy brings with it a mixture of hope and anxiety, but there is one fear that lingers in the shadows: the birth of a daughter. In many communities where Bridewealth customs governed marriage and lineage, sons held a particular importance. Sons were the carriers of family names, the future grooms whose Bridewealth would one day secure new alliances. They were often seen as the family's legacy, the link to ancestors and property. Daughters, while cherished, were sometimes viewed through a different lens. Because daughters were expected to marry into other families, their futures lay beyond the household. The Bridewealth paid for a daughter's marriage was considered a transfer of wealth out of the family. This created a quiet fear among families, especially fathers and husbands, that daughters were less valuable in the eyes of tradition. For the bride in South Ancient Africa, this meant an added layer of pressure. Conceiving a son was not just a personal hope, but a social expectation. Repeated births of daughters could lead to whispered concerns, criticism, or even blame. Women who gave birth to girls sometimes faced subtle exclusion or judgment from their husbands or in-laws. They might be accused of failing their families, despite the reality that sex was determined beyond anyone's control. This fear was compounded by the physical toll of frequent pregnancies. With little access to healthcare, every birth risked the woman's health. The bride might find herself exhausted, weakened, and vulnerable, yet expected to conceive again quickly to fulfill her role. Social expectations extended beyond childbirth. The bride's behavior, her ability to manage household duties, and her relationship with her husband and in-laws were all scrutinized. A woman was expected to demonstrate obedience, patience, and endurance, suppressing personal desires for the sake of family harmony. Her success was measured by her ability to uphold traditions and secure the family's honor. If she faltered, if illness kept her from work, if she failed to bear sons, or if she challenged expectations, she risked social isolation. Her standing in the community and household could diminish, leaving her vulnerable. The weight of these expectations shaped every moment of her day. Her identity was bound not only to her labor and motherhood, but to an unspoken contract of sacrifice and submission. Yet, even within these confines, women found moments of quiet resistance. Through storytelling, shared grief, and the passing of knowledge, they nurtured resilience. The bride's journey through motherhood was not only a personal struggle, but a mirror reflecting the broader social order, its values, its pressures, and its consequences. As her children grew, so too did her understanding of her place in the world, a world where tradition both sustained and constrained her. As twilight softens the edges of the village, the air becomes thick with the weight of unseen worlds, where ancestors watch silently, where spirits whisper through leaves, and where the delicate balance between life and death is ever present. In societies bound by bridewealth, marriage and childbirth were not merely social contracts or biological events. They were profound spiritual journeys, woven into a vast tapestry of ritual and belief that shaped every woman's existence. From the moment a young woman's family began negotiations for bridewealth, spiritual considerations threaded through the process like an invisible current. Elders and spiritual leaders would often be consulted, seeking blessings and guidance to ensure the success of the union. The bride herself might undergo purification rite ceremonies, meant to prepare her body and soul for the profound transformation ahead. These rituals varied, but often involved herbal baths infused with fragrant leaves and roots, smoke cleansing with sacred herbs, and the symbolic shedding of old ties to her birth family. Such rites were believed to protect her from malevolent spirits and to invite ancestral favor, establishing her place within her new family and community. On the wedding day, rituals unfolded in a measured rhythm. The exchange of bridewealth, be it cattle, cloth, or grain, was accompanied by solemn prayers and chants, their cadence echoing the heartbeat of the community. The community's elders invoked blessings not only for fertility and prosperity, but for harmony between families, longevity, and protection against misfortune. The symbolism in these ceremonies was rich and layered. The bride's attire might be adorned with beads or colors, signifying fertility and purity. The bridewealth gifts themselves carried meanings: cattle, symbolizing wealth and life, grains representing sustenance, and cloth expressing honor. After marriage, the transition into motherhood became the next sacred passage. Childbirth was revered as a powerful event, both a gift and a trial. The process was enveloped in rituals aimed at safeguarding mother and child. Midwives were more than skilled attendants. They were guardians of ancient wisdom, weaving together medicine, prayer, and ritual. Herbal concoctions, often secret family recipes, were administered to ease labor pains or hasten delivery. Leaves of certain plants were burned to cleanse the air, believed to dispel evil spirits that might harm mother or infant. During labor, chants and songs echoed softly, their rhythms intended to soothe pain and invite spiritual protection. The midwife's hands were steady and experienced, but her role extended beyond the physical, reaching into the realm of spirit. The newborn's first breath was marked by ceremonies that welcomed them into the world and the community. Naming rituals often involved ancestral blessings, connecting the child to lineage and identity. In some cultures, the firstborn son's arrival was celebrated with particular reverence, a reflection of the emphasis on male lineage inherent in the Bridewealth system. This celebration might include feasts, dancing, and offerings to ancestors. Daughters were honored too, but their arrival sometimes carried a quieter blessing, reflecting the complex social dynamics where their futures lay in marriage to other families. Beyond birth, rites of passage marked a girl's journey into womanhood. Puberty ceremonies combined instruction with celebration elders and women's groups teaching young girls about fertility, marriage customs, and household responsibilities. These rituals were both protective and instructive, designed to prepare girls for their roles within the community while reinforcing cultural values. The spiritual framework enveloping these rites was intricate. Ancestral spirits were ever present, believed to guide and watch over families. Offerings, prayers, and sacred symbols maintained connections between the living and the dead. Within this cultural cosmos, women held unique roles. While generally constrained socially, some served as priestesses or custodians of ritual knowledge, wielding subtle power through spiritual authority. Archaeology has unveiled much about these practices. Pottery, adorned with symbolic motifs, figurines representing fertility goddesses, and sacred sites speak to a rich cultural imagination where the mysteries of life and death intertwined. Grave goods and burial arrangements reveal beliefs about the afterlife and the continuing presence of ancestors scoring the spiritual weight borne by women in their roles as mothers and lineage bearers. These rituals and beliefs provided women with frameworks to understand their experiences not merely as hardships, but as sacred passages imbued with meaning. Through rites of cleansing, blessing, and transition, women navigated the tensions between constraint and empowerment, survival and spirituality. The mystery of these cultural practices invites reflection not only on the past, but on the enduring human search for connection, purpose, and hope amid life's uncertainties. A very different world in South Ancient Africa, one of authority, tradition, and social power. At the heart of this world were the elders, respected men and women whose experience and status gave them considerable influence over family decisions, marriages, and the exchange of bridewealth. These elders were the custodians of tradition, overseeing the negotiations that arranged marriages, setting the terms for bridewealth, and ensuring that customs were faithfully observed. Their homes often reflected their standing larger compounds with finer materials, space for gatherings, and symbols of wealth such as cattle herds or crafted goods. Within these walls, the rhythms of power played out. Conversations about alliances, land, and honor were commonplace, while decisions made here rippled through entire communities. Men, especially husbands, occupied a position of authority within families. They held rights over property and decisions, while women, bound by tradition and bridewealth, had limited formal power. Expand his influence and forge stronger ties. Marriage was a tool of social strategy used to bind families together, settle disputes, and create networks of support. It was less about personal affection and more about alliance. While women labored in the home and bore children, men often engaged in communal affairs discussions with other leaders, trade negotiations, or oversight of agricultural work. Elders, in particular, held a dual role as enforcers and protectors. They maintained social order, adjudicated disputes, and preserved the cultural fabric through storytelling, ritual leadership, and counsel. Their power was tempered by responsibility. Failure to uphold tradition or maintain peace could lead to loss of respect or challenges to authority. Though the system privileged men and elders, women's roles were not insignificant. Through marriage, childbearing, and kinship, women formed the connections that sustained families and communities. Yet the power imbalance was clear. The Bridewealth system both reflected and reinforced a hierarchy where women's choices and freedoms were limited, their labor and bodies integral to social continuity. Reminder that beneath cultural rituals and traditions lie the dynamics of power, gender, and society. As we close this exploration, it becomes clear that the story of Bridewealth is a story of human lives intertwined, of endurance and authority, constraint and influence, tradition and change. As the quiet night deepens, and women bore the weight of duty, endurance, and hope, we've walked alongside a young bride whose choices were shaped by tradition, whose body and spirit carried the hopes of many, and glimpsed the lives of elders and men who held authority in this delicate balance. These stories remind us of the intricate tapestry of human experience, where joy and hardship, power and resilience, faith and struggle are woven together. The gentle strength of women enduring, and the bonds that tied communities together. May their stories lull your thoughts into peaceful stillness, and may the quiet unfolding of history bring calm to your mind. Sleep well.